The Israeli government is under pressure from two cabinet ministers to examine a ceasefire proposal from Hamas. But Prime Minister Story-Omert remains adamant about using force despite failing to stop the firing of rockets across the border from Gaza. This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Jane Dutton. Peace talks between Israel and Fatah have been given new life in the past month with the US-sponsored talks in Annapolis. But is the Israeli government now ready to talk to the other side of the Palestinian government, the militant group Hamas? The official Israeli government line remains that it won't talk to Hamas until the group renounces violence and recognizes the state of Israel. But two Israeli cabinet ministers have said they think Israel should talk to Hamas. That's an idea Olmert continues to reject. Mohammed Shoukhi explains what's behind the rumblings of a truce.
A truce between Israel and Hamas looks unlikely. Nothing in Gaza indicates this will happen. The air raids continue to target the Hamas and Islamic Jihad fighters. Things on the ground look just as bad. Israel continues to mobilize forces amid possible escalation and a threat of a full-scale incursion of the enclave. The idea of storming the Gaza Strip may not be the favored one by the Israelis at the moment. Yet, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad consider the escalated targeting of their leaders as the logical follow-up of the Annapolis conference. What then has urged the two Israeli ministers to say that their government should examine any serious ceasefire proposal from the Palestinian Islamic movement? Infrastructure Minister Benjamin bin Eliezer and Transport Minister Shaul Mufaz, both former top brass in the Israeli military, say offers of a truce should be given serious consideration. They should know both ministers tried and failed to prevent the firing of the Qassam rockets from Gaza, and both have an expert vision of Hamas's fighting capability and the expected Israeli price to be paid should they take the military option. This option has been the preferred choice for the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert.
We will fulfill our duty, and we will do it until we remove the threat of Qassams and rockets of the residents of Sderot.
These threats made 64% of Sderot residents leave town, while 78% said they are afraid of the continuing rocket fall. It may not be a victory for Hamas, but it's a card that has forced the Israelis to consider their options once again. But the suggestions by the two Israeli ministers could be seen as an implicit recognition of each other. Israel refuses to negotiate until Hamas recognizes its existence. But Mr. Eliezer said this should not be a precondition for talks to take place. Outside observers believe that a truce may be better for the civilian population on both sides.
Joining us to discuss this issue are our guests in Gaza, Ahmed Youssef, advisor to the deposed Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh. In Ramallah, Abdallah, Deputy Undersecretary of the Palestinian Foreign Ministry in the caretaker government. And in Jerusalem, Gerald Steinberg, Head of Department of Political Science at Bar-Ilan University. Welcome, gentlemen, all of you. Mr. Youssef, how serious is Hamas about this offer of a ceasefire?
Actually, let me clarify something. I don't think that Hamas submitted any proposal to the Israeli regarding the ceasefire. Even the issue is a very hot issue, and there are many Europeans who convey a message from some Israeli side that they are interested to address the issue of a ceasefire, or what we call it in Arabic, tahdi'ah.
So are you denying that Ismail Haniyeh offered this temporary truce?
Yes, I am really denying the story because it's all allegation and big lie. It started with one of the Israeli journalists said that he received something, but when we check with the Prime Minister, things like this never happened or took place. So it's just a big lie.
But is this something that you would consider?
Actually, if there is a proposal coming from through a third party or something like this to address the issue, we might be interested to address a short-term truce or ceasefire with the Israelis to, in some conditions, actually lifting the sanction, opening the gates with Egypt, and also ease the trade or let the humanitarian food supplies and medical supplies to come to Gaza. Something like this, we can talk about a short-term hudna or ceasefire. But we are not talking about the hudna, which means the political vision for Hamas, which consider years and the Israeli withdrawal from pre-1967 border and releasing all Palestinian prisoners and address the right of return.
Okay, let me, excuse me interrupting, go back to, it sounds like there's still the possibility of discussing a truce. Mr. Steinberg, do you think the thinking behind this, if this is to go ahead, indicates that Israel has been successful in the squeezing of Gaza, as well as the pinpointing of militants in the past week, some 20 of them?
There is a sense in Israel that the IDF now has the upper hand and that Hamas is hurting. There's also an attempt to try to say to Hamas, look, if you are serious about this, we will help you to prevent other groups like Islamic Jihad and various other groups that Hamas is unable to control. We'll try to make sure that they also are within that framework. But you have to show us that you're serious about this. And there have been a lot of messages coming back and forth. There's something going on in terms of communications. It's too early to tell how serious it is. But the Israelis are willing to consider this if, in fact, Hamas is hurting enough to agree to some of the Israeli terms. And that particularly means not using this time to rebuild, to reinforce, to increase the radius of the rockets, to close the Philadelphia corridor. All those things are extremely important. No Israeli government would consider or could survive without making sure that Hamas would not use this time to, in fact, increase its offensive terrorist capabilities.
And we are getting reports that the Israeli government has made some sort of overtures towards Hamas. Is Israel playing Hamas and Fatah off each other?
Well, I think Hamas and Fatah are playing off each other by themselves. They don't need any Israeli help. We saw the coup, we saw the violence in Gaza, and clearly there's a real problem for Palestinians there that Israel or nobody else can really solve. Israel has a concrete problem, and that is that there are dozens of these rockets and missiles being fired from Gaza. There are no Israeli troops there. There's no Israeli presence there. This is an area that has total control by the Palestinians, and yet they're using it for offensive purposes. Israel has to deal with it in some way. The preference is not to have a full-scale invasion. A question always then comes up, well, what do you do afterwards? Who's going to control it? International troops, Israeli occupation. The options are pretty bad there. So Israel's trying to come up with some sort of other solution, and right now the solution seems to be making Hamas pay enough of a price to say we cannot continue this. We want to reach at least a temporary ceasefire over a number of years. And that's what we're hearing from various cabinet ministers. I don't think it's inarticulate government policy. What we're hearing is through actions and through words an exploration of the options, both from the Hamas leadership and from the Israeli leadership. And the question really is, what are the implications for that, including, by the way, for the Annapolis process? What is the role of Fatah if Israel recognizes and negotiates with Hamas?
Right, well, let's bring Fatah in there. Mr. Abdullah, is this something that Fatah is advocating at the moment, opening up of some sort of dialogue? I mean, wouldn't that undermine Mahmoud Abbas's negotiating stance?
Well, first of all, let me correct. I am not the Deputy Foreign Minister anymore. I am a chairman of the Political Committee of the Legislative Council now. Now, about the talks in the media in the past few days relating a ceasefire or relating a calm period proposal from Hamas, I don't think it is unfair or it is just creation of the minds of some journalists. There are some rumors about that. It has been circulating in the past, and it seems that Hamas is looking now how to protect their heads and how to keep their control over Gaza through the Israeli line. This is unfortunate, and I believe if there is a ceasefire or there is a calm period, which the Palestinian government, when it was the legitimate government supported by its parliamentary branch, the Legislative Council, and when it was representing the Palestinian people, it proposed this, and it carried out more than once a ceasefire since November of 2005 and on. It is the Israeli side that never kept its word on controlling itself, stopping its incursions, attacking Palestinians, assassinating them, in a preemptive strikes. All these things led to the chaotic situation we are facing now. It is not true that Israel really is worried or concerned about its security through the man-made pipes called rockets, when at the same time Israel is using all its force.
Okay, let's talk about these rockets, and I'd like to bring, excuse me interrupting, Mr. Youssef in here. I mean, to stop these rocket attacks, which is part of this deal, if there is going to be any sort of deal or any sort of agreement on any temporary truce, is to stop these rocket attacks. What control does Ismail Haniyeh have over these groups within Palestine?
We have addressed this issue before, and we told as long as the occupation and the Israeli incursion and daily bombings and putting the Palestinian in this big cage or this big prison, the people, they have the right to defend themselves. Firing rockets all the time, it was to defend the Palestinian people. This is the only tool that we have to scaring the Israeli. We don't have the Israeli military might to defend ourselves, but this is what we have now to making the Israeli pleading, or at least scaring those Israeli who are living in neighboring settlement. So I do believe that whoever would like to talk about the ceasefire, we have said many times, the Israeli, they have to stop their daily incursion and bombing to the Palestinian towns. And if they really would like to have a ceasefire, we are not, when we talk about the ceasefire, not we are because we are weak, but this is a sanction that hurting all the Palestinian people. Maybe the high national Palestinian interest driven the government to do something, to talk about the ceasefire, because many of the Europeans also address this issue with the government to block all the Israeli excuses of attacking the Palestinian
Let's bring
daily.
Mr. Steinberg in there. I mean, how can anything be discussed? How can any peace be put on the table when Israel continues to build its settlements? We heard just today that money's been set aside for another 740 new settlements. Surely that questions their commitment to peace.
Let's distinguish between the mini-war that's going on out of Gaza and the broader conflict which has been going on for at least 60 years. This has been a war that Palestinians and their Arab supporters since 1947 rejected the UN partition plan, said no two states, said we're not going to allow the Jews to have national sovereignty, equality, we're going to be the only ones controlling here. That's what this conflict has been about for 60 years, and we heard the same slogans just now from the two Palestinian colleagues of mine. So I think that if we're going to address one issue in isolation, we're going to miss the main point here. If there's going to be a peace process, a serious peace process, so that the Palestinian people won't suffer and the Jewish people in Israel won't suffer, then we have to address all of these grievances together. When the Palestinians say, you know, you're right, we really should accept the right of the Jewish people to have a homeland in their national ancient area in Jerusalem and the rest of Israel, and we can divide this land, we can have two states for two peoples, let's negotiate that. Then there won't be any more settlements, we'll have a
but Israel at the moment is accused of being provocative by putting up these settlements when nothing has been decided yet.
Well,
other than
Israel's
it being built
always
on
being
land that's
accused
not
of being
theirs.
provocative.
Okay, let's leave it there and take a short break. But when we come back, we take a closer look at the civilians suffering on both sides. Stay with us.